So looking at our sense of strength and our sense of comportment of our body such that we can oppose directions of force without overcommitting forward, but also in such a way that channels the force of the opponent's action into the ground. Now we're going to look to see how we might do that and extend the strength of that structure through our sword. So we'll begin with my training partner, David. He's going to stand in a strong structure, but he'll keep the sword on his shoulder for the moment, right? So if he's looking to oppose a direction of force, typically his goal is to cover the area, the geographic space in which my sword is occupying, right? So he sees my sword, he wants to orient his structure towards my sword, and so he adopts this posture here, right? And tilt your hips forward, or hinge your hips. There you go, beautiful, just a little bit. And so what he's done here is he's aligned the entirety of his sword in the direction of my weapon. And that could be, my weapon could be on my shoulder, my weapon could be out in front of me. In either case, David is continuing to keep all of the features of his structure in line. So his point, his hilt, and his chest, all radiating outward in the direction of my weapon here, right? What's really important is to know that it's easy to think that you're closing the line of your opponent's attack, that you're opposing the direction of force that that is represented by your opponent's sword. If you're pointing your point towards your opponent and you're keeping your hilt in the direction of your opponent, right? So it's easy to believe that what you've done here is that you've closed the line of attack, right? So if I'm standing here and David is pointing at me, but he's keeping his hilt, the physical strong, this part of his blade, his cross, in the direction of my sword, that he's sufficiently strong here. Now, there's a problem with this. He's not. Just because my cross is here doesn't mean that my only angle of attack is here. Right? It doesn't mean that my only angle of attack is through David's strength. If I attacked into David's strength this way, then yes, he does an effective job of closing that opening. But that being said, I can also, from exactly where I am, extend my arm forward through David's weak and towards his body, right? And so because his sword wasn't in line, it doesn't matter how strongly he wants to oppose this. He can push as hard as he wants. It's very easy for me to just continue to strike through his weak, right? So what David needs to do is he needs to make sure that his point and his hilt are in line over my sword, or pushing my sword away from the center line. We might call the center line an imaginary line between both of our chests. And so if my sword is in this space, then David points towards my sword. And then if I bring my sword forward, now if my sword is here, are you towards my sword? There you go. So he has to make sure that he keeps it so that I can't get over, right? I want to get over his sword, and he reorients to make sure that he has the inside position, that his sword is pushing my sword outward, right? But always using strong structure, never reverting back to the weak structure that we saw before. Because in this case, it's very easy for me to strike through his weak and hit him without any sort of opposition whatsoever, right? So David is going to orient his structure in the direction of my sword. And if my sword is down here, he's just going to reorient his structure in the direction of my sword. If my sword is over here, he's going to reorient the structure in the direction of my sword. It's on my shoulder. And what we're going to do to test the structure, there you go, good. What we're going to do to test the structure is we're just going to apply pressure from the outside towards their weak. So what we can do is, regardless of where my sword is, follow my sword. I can strike through his weak. And if he's doing a great job of orienting his structure in the direction of my action, no matter what I do, if I try and point towards his body, if I try and aim this direction of force towards his body, there should be no way that David's not able to oppose me and channel my action into his cross. Good, right? So if I try and switch, good. And every time I'm trying to go through his weak, and I'm looking to strike through his weak towards his body, and he's orienting his structure in such a way that he's effectively mitigating my action, right? A good way to do this is just allow your opponent to put their sword forward and just bind on their weak and point across their body to their shoulder. If I'm unable to do so, then David is using sufficiently strong structure to oppose. If David does so in a weak way, and I point towards his body, and I'm able to get my point in line with his body, and in a strong way on my part, right? So I'm able to get my hilt, point, and chest in one line through his weak towards his body, then he's insufficiently strong, right? So the way you might play this game without any movement is I will adopt a posture. David will comport his structure. And then I will endeavor to strike through his weak without me moving any other direction than towards the opening that I'm looking to attack, right? And David is looking to oppose anything that I do from here with his weak. So if I'm unable to get his sword over without pointing past his body, and then it should be channeled into his cross. All right? And that's how you extend the strength of your sword as far away from you as you can. Now, is there a place for parrying an action or controlling an opponent's weapon with just the physical strong of your sword? So as opposed to him trying to parry with his point, he parries with the physical strong. He does this kind of action. Is there a place for that? There are certain times where this type of action may be the only effective option that you have. But one of the problems with this is that David wants to control the space that my sword is occupying. He wants to control the space that my sword is occupying as far away from him as is possible for him. And so if he has to wait for me to get this close, that this type of structure, his chest and his hands, are in line with my sword, then it's going to be really difficult for him to mitigate actions that I make to other angles of attack, right? So what he wants to do is he wants to begin his control as far away from him as possible. And so he wants his strength to extend as far away from him as possible. So I bring my sword forward, he's able to extend his strength all the way out to almost here on his blade. All right, there's no way for me to get to David, even all the way up to his weak, without pushing past David, right? And when I push past David, that means I'm not pointing at David. And so what David can do in those moments is he can let go, and he can do it safely, right? So our goal with our structure and our strength is to extend the structure of our sword as far away from us as we can, to extend the strength of our structure as far into our sword as we can. And we do that by keeping all of our sword, our hilt and our point, in line with the opponent's sword and the subsequent direction of force that they can attack with.